Picture this: a man sitting alone in a room, no noise, no notifications, no one demanding his attention, just silence and his own thoughts. Most men would last maybe 3 minutes before reaching for their phone, turning on the TV, filling that void with anything, literally anything, to avoid being alone with themselves. There's a famous study where people were given a choice: sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes, or give themselves painful electric shocks. 2/3 chose the electric shocks. They would rather experience physical pain than face the silence of their own mind. Think about what that reveals. We've become so terrified of ourselves, so uncomfortable in our own presence, that we'll do anything to escape it. We'll scroll endlessly through strangers' lives. We'll binge content we don't even enjoy. We'll fill every moment with noise, distraction, stimulation, anything to avoid the one thing that actually matters: spending time with who we are. But here's what the weak will never understand. There's a luxury so profound, so powerful, that emperors throughout history have killed to possess it. It's not gold. It's not territory. It's not the adoration of millions. It's something most modern men have completely lost access to, and they don't even realize what they're missing. Marcus Aurelius ruled the greatest empire in human history. He commanded legions. He controlled more wealth than you could spend in 1,000 lifetimes. He could have anything, anyone, anywhere. But you know what he treasured most? The hours before dawn when he was completely alone, writing to himself, thinking without interruption, existing without having to perform for anyone. That wasn't escape. That was the prize. The strong man's secret luxury isn't what you think. It's not excess. It's not indulgence. It's not pleasure that everyone else can see and envy. It's something the crowd considers punishment. The ability to be completely alone and completely at peace. To need nothing from anyone. To be so solid in yourself that solitude isn't loneliness. It's freedom. And if that idea makes you uncomfortable, if you're already thinking of reasons why you couldn't possibly handle that, why you need people, need stimulation, need constant connection, then pay very close attention. Because what I'm about to reveal will either transform how you see strength, or it will expose exactly why you'll never possess it. The Roman emperor wakes at 4 in the morning, not because he has to, but because these hours belong entirely to him. No senators demanding audiences, no generals requesting orders, no citizens needing judgments, just Marcus Aurelius, a journal, and the quiet darkness before the world awakens. This is where he does his real work. Not the visible work of ruling an empire, but the invisible work of ruling himself. And he understood something that modern men have completely forgotten. The man who cannot govern himself will always be governed by others. External power means nothing if you're enslaved internally. You can command armies, but if you can't command your own mind, you're just a slave in an emperor's clothes. Here's what weak men fundamentally misunderstand about luxury. They think luxury is addition. More things, more experiences, more people around you, more stimulation, more validation, more. They measure wealth by what they can accumulate, what they can show off, what others can see and envy. But the strong man knows luxury is subtraction. It's the ability to remove everything unnecessary until only the essential remains. It's having so much internal wealth that you need nothing external to feel complete. The weak man's luxury is dependence dressed up as abundance. He needs the expensive car to feel valuable, needs the crowd's attention to feel significant, needs constant entertainment to feel alive, needs relationship drama to feel something. He's rich in possessions, but poor in self. Surrounded by everything yet alone with nothing. Marcus Aurelius could have spent his mornings in any pleasure imaginable. Wine from every corner of the empire, entertainment from the world's greatest performers, the company of philosophers, artists, beautiful companions. Instead, he chose solitude. He chose silence. He chose the difficult work of examining his own character, his own thoughts, his own soul. Why? Because he understood that true luxury isn't what you can afford to have. It's what you can afford to lose and remain unchanged. The strong man builds an internal fortress so complete that nothing external can shake him. Not praise, not criticism, not success, not failure, not companionship, not solitude. He's the same man regardless of circumstances because his center is inside himself, not in the world's opinion or life's conditions. Think about your own life right now. When was the last time you spent significant time alone without any distraction? No phone, no music, no podcast playing in the background, no scrolling, no checking messages, just you and your own mind. If that thought creates anxiety, if you're already making excuses for why that's not realistic, why you don't have time, why you need to stay connected, you're revealing something crucial. You're afraid of yourself. You're uncomfortable in the one presence you can never escape. And that fear, that discomfort, makes you controllable. Because the man who can't be alone is desperate for company. And desperate men make terrible decisions. They accept less than they deserve. They compromise their values. They betray themselves in small ways that accumulate into a life they don't recognize. All because they can't handle the luxury that actually matters, self-sufficiency. The Stoics had a practice called voluntary discomfort, deliberately experiencing what you fear losing. Marcus Aurelius would sleep on the floor sometimes, eat simple food, wear plain clothes. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to prove to himself that he didn't need luxury to be content. He was testing his internal fortress, making sure his peace didn't depend on external comfort. Modern men do the opposite. They build their entire sense of self on external scaffolding. Their identity depends on their job title, their relationship status, their social media following, their possessions, their reputation. Then they wonder why they feel so unstable, why anxiety plagues them, why they can't relax even when they're successful. Because they've built their house on sand and they know it. The strong man's luxury is the opposite. He builds on bedrock. His foundation is internal. His peace comes from self-knowledge, self-control, self-sufficiency. You could take everything external from him, and he'd still be himself. You could give him everything and he wouldn't change. He's the same man in a palace or a prison because his real wealth is portable. It goes wherever he goes because it's inside him. Here's what this looks like practically. The weak man checks his phone the moment he wakes up, immediately flooding his mind with other people's thoughts, problems, agendas. He starts the day reactive, responding to the world rather than creating from his own center. The strong man protects his morning like Marcus Aurelius did. He gives the first hours to himself, thinking, planning, centering, building internal clarity before engaging with external chaos. This isn't selfishness, it's self-preservation. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot lead others if you can't lead yourself. You cannot create value in the world if you're constantly consuming everyone else's noise. The weak man is terrified of boredom. He needs constant stimulation, always something playing in the background, always scrolling, always consuming. He's like a man dying of thirst, drinking salt water. The more he consumes, the more desperate his thirst becomes. He's addicted to stimulation, but starving for meaning. The strong man embraces boredom. He understands that boredom is actually the mind's way of saying, I'm ready to create something. That restless energy the weak man medicates with consumption. The strong man channels it into creation, into thinking, into building, into becoming. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But most men never realize this. They spend their entire lives trying to control externals, what others think, how situations unfold, whether people appreciate them. And they exhaust themselves completely because externals are ultimately uncontrollable. Meanwhile, their internal world, the one thing they actually can control, runs wild. Chaotic thoughts, unexamined emotions, reactive patterns. They're trying to organize the world while their own mind is complete disorder. It's like trying to clean everyone else's house while yours is burning down. The strong man does the opposite. He focuses entirely on what he can control. His thoughts, his reactions, his choices, his character. He lets the external world be what it is while he perfects his internal response to it. This is real power. not controlling others, but being uncontrollable by others, not dominating circumstances, but remaining undominated by circumstances. And this power is only accessible in solitude. Because solitude is where you face yourself without distraction, where you can't hide behind relationships, entertainment, busyness, or any other escape mechanism. You're just there, with your thoughts, your fears, your desires, your authentic self beneath all the performance. Weak men avoid this confrontation at all costs. They'd rather do anything than face themselves honestly. So they stay busy, stay distracted, stay surrounded, stay stimulated, and they call this living. But it's not living, it's avoiding. The strong man seeks this confrontation. He schedules it, protects it, values it above almost everything else, because he knows that every hour spent in honest self-examination makes him stronger, clearer, more capable. He's doing internal training while everyone else is seeking external validation. Here's the brutal truth weak men can't accept. Other people cannot complete you. They can enhance you, challenge you, support you. But if you need them to feel whole, you're not strong, you're dependent. And dependence is the opposite of luxury. Real luxury is needing nothing, wanting things, enjoying things, choosing things, but needing nothing. The man who needs nothing can have anything because he's not desperate. He's not grasping. He's not compromising himself to get or keep what he thinks he needs. He moves through life from a position of sufficiency rather than scarcity. Marcus Aurelius faced this reality daily. He was surrounded by people who needed things from him, who wanted his favor, his approval, his resources, and he had to remain clear about who he was beneath all that noise. The only way he could do this was through disciplined solitude, through protecting time alone where nobody could perform for him, and he didn't have to perform for anyone. In those hours, he reminded himself of fundamental truths, that external goods are temporary, that reputation is just other people's opinions, that power is responsibility, not privilege, that death is coming and none of this matters as much as living virtuously. These weren't abstract philosophical exercises. This was practical mental training. He was building psychological immunity to the corruption that power inevitably brings, the luxury of being alone without loneliness, of needing no one's approval to feel valid, of being the same man in private that you are in public because you've eliminated the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. This is what the strong man builds, and it requires something most modern men refuse to do: turn off the noise and face themselves. Social media has destroyed this capacity in millions. They've become so addicted to external feedback loops that they literally don't know who they are without an audience. They think by posting, documenting, sharing constantly. They perform their lives rather than living them. And they wonder why they feel empty, why nothing satisfies, why success feels hollow. Because they're succeeding at performance, not at being. They're getting validation for a character they're playing, not for who they actually are. The strong man doesn't post his morning routine, doesn't document his workout, doesn't share his thoughts for likes. He lives privately and presents publicly only what serves a purpose. His real life, his internal world, his actual growth, all of that happens in silence where no one is watching and no one can validate it. This is terrifying for validation addicts. If no one sees it, did it even happen? If no one approves, does it even matter? And this is exactly why they'll never be strong. Because they've outsourced their sense of reality to others. They don't trust their own experience unless it's been validated by the crowd. The strong man trusts himself first, his own judgment, his own experience, his own values. He doesn't need the crowd's approval because he's his own authority. Not in an arrogant way, but in a sovereign way. He's taken full responsibility for his own life, which means he gets to decide what matters, what's valuable, what's worth pursuing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." This paradox defines weak men. They claim to love themselves, but trust strangers' opinions more than their own judgment. They'll change their entire life direction based on what others might think, while ignoring what they know is true for themselves. The strong man reverses this. He cares about his own opinion first, not because others don't matter, but because he's the one who has to live with his choices. He's the one who will face the consequences. He's the one who will look back at the end and judge whether he lived well. So he makes decisions based on his own values, his own vision, his own standards, and he doesn't need anyone's permission or approval to do so. This is the hidden luxury, complete internal authority, the ability to decide what's good, what's important, what's worth pursuing, without needing external validation. Most men never develop this. They remain perpetual children, always looking for someone else to tell them they're doing okay, they're on the right path, they're enough. The strong man becomes his own father, his own judge, his own authority. And this self-governance is the foundation of all real power. Think about how much time you spend seeking validation, checking whether people liked your post, wondering what someone thinks of you, adjusting your behavior to earn approval, explaining yourself to people whose opinion ultimately doesn't matter. Now imagine redirecting all that energy inward, into self-improvement, into creation, into building something that actually matters to you, regardless of whether anyone ever sees it or appreciates it. That's the shift from weakness to strength, from external dependence to internal sufficiency, from performance to authenticity, and it only happens in solitude, where you can't perform for anyone and have to face who you actually are. The weak man fills his calendar obsessively, every evening occupied, every weekend planned, every moment accounted for with social obligations. He's terrified of empty space because empty space means facing himself. The strong man protects empty space like it's sacred. He turns down invitations, says no to opportunities, creates boundaries that others don't understand, because he knows that the most valuable thing he has isn't his time with others, it's his time with himself. In those protected hours, he's not consuming. He's creating, not reacting, responding from his center, not being scattered, remaining focused, not being influenced by every passing mood and opinion, staying aligned with his own true north. Marcus Aurelius had an entire empire demanding his attention, yet he still found time for solitude. What's your excuse? That you're busy? He was running an empire. That you have obligations? He had literally millions depending on him. That you need to stay connected? He was managing generals across continents without cell phones or internet. The truth is, you don't lack time for solitude. You lack conviction that it matters. You've bought the modern lie, that connection. Networking, staying visible, being available. These are what matter. And they do matter, for weak men trying to climb by being useful to others. But they don't matter for strong men building from their own foundation. Here's what happens when you begin prioritizing solitude. First, people will be confused. They'll question why you're not available like you used to be. They'll wonder what's wrong, whether you're upset with them. Let them wonder. Their confusion reveals they were benefiting from your lack of boundaries. Second, you'll face the discomfort you've been avoiding. All the thoughts and feelings you've been medicating with distraction will surface. This is good. You can't integrate what you won't face. Third, you'll discover who you actually are beneath all the performance, and this might not match the image you've been presenting. That gap between your real self and your performed self creates all kinds of psychological problems. Closing that gap is the work. Fourth, you'll become dramatically more effective because you're no longer scattered, reacting to everyone else's agendas. You're centered, acting from your own clarity. The difference in output is staggering. 1 hour of focused work from a centered man produces more than 10 hours of scattered effort from a distracted man. Fifth, you'll stop caring what most people think, not in a sociopathic way, but in a free way. You'll realize that most opinions don't matter because most people are operating from their own fears and limitations. Their judgments say more about them than about you. And finally, you'll discover peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. The strong man's ultimate luxury. Being okay regardless of what's happening externally. Not because nothing affects you, but because your center is solid enough to handle whatever comes. Marcus Aurelius faced wars, plagues, betrayals, loss, yet his meditations reveal a man at peace. not because his life was easy, but because his internal fortress was impenetrable. He'd done the work in solitude that made him unshakable in chaos. The weak man pursues comfort and calls it luxury. The strong man pursues challenge and finds luxury in his capacity to handle it. The weak man needs perfect circumstances to feel okay. The strong man is okay in any circumstance. The weak man's peace depends on controlling externals. The strong man's peace comes from governing internals. See the difference? One is building on sand, the other on bedrock. One is constantly vulnerable to life's inevitable changes. The other is solid regardless. And the foundation for this strength is built in solitude, where you face yourself honestly and do the internal work that no one sees but everyone eventually feels. There's a question Marcus Aurelius asked himself repeatedly: what am I doing with my soul? Not what am I achieving externally? What title do I have? What do people think of me? But what's happening in my internal world? Am I growing or stagnating? Am I becoming wiser or just older? Am I mastering myself or being mastered by circumstances? The weak man never asks this question because he's too busy managing his image. The strong man asks it constantly because his image doesn't matter. His substance does. Every morning in solitude, he takes inventory. What thoughts am I feeding? What patterns am I reinforcing? What version of myself am I becoming? And he makes corrections. Not dramatic, visible changes, small internal adjustments that compound over time into complete transformation. This is invisible work. No one sees it happening. There's no external reward, no validation, no recognition. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing you're becoming who you're supposed to be. The strong man doesn't need applause for this work. The work itself is the reward. The weak man can't understand this. If there's no external payoff, why bother? If no one sees it, what's the point? And this is exactly why he stays weak. He's only willing to do work that gets recognized, that earns validation, that impresses others. The strong man does the invisible work that makes everything else possible. He builds the foundation that no one sees, so he can build the structure everyone notices. But he knows the foundation is what matters. The structure is just a consequence. Marcus Aurelius could have spent his time seeking glory, building monuments to himself, ensuring his legacy through visible achievements. Instead, he spent hours alone, writing private reflections, working on his character, becoming a better man. Those private writings, never intended for publication, have influenced millions for 2,000 years. The monuments he could have built would be dust. The internal work he did still stands. This is the paradox the strong man understands. The most public impact comes from the most private work. The most lasting influence comes from the most invisible effort. The most profound power comes from the most silent development. You want to change the world? Stop performing for it and start mastering yourself in solitude. You want to lead others? Stop seeking their approval and start governing yourself with discipline. You want to matter? Stop trying to be seen and start doing work worth seeing. The hidden luxury Marcus Aurelius understood isn't about having, it's about being. Being solid enough to stand alone, being clear enough to think independently, being strong enough to need nothing. This is wealth that can't be taken, power that can't be voted away, luxury that circumstances can't diminish. And it's only available to men willing to turn off the noise, face themselves honestly, and do the difficult internal work in the silence where no one is watching. Most men will read this and change nothing. They'll nod along, maybe save it, possibly share it, then go right back to seeking validation, filling every moment with distraction, avoiding solitude like it's punishment rather than prize. A few will understand. They'll start protecting time alone. They'll begin the uncomfortable work of facing themselves. They'll build the internal fortress that makes external chaos irrelevant. These few will become dangerous in the best possible way. Dangerous because they're uncontrollable. You can't manipulate someone who needs nothing from you. Can't pressure someone who doesn't require your approval. Can't break someone whose foundation is internal rather than external. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but his real power wasn't his throne. It was his ability to sit alone before dawn, completely at peace, needing nothing, governed by no one but himself. That's the luxury weak men will never understand, and strong men will never trade for anything the world offers. The room is silent, the world is asleep, and somewhere, a man sits alone with his thoughts, building the kind of strength empires can't grant, and circumstances can't steal. Write in the comments, "I need nothing," and notice what happens inside you when you declare this. Notice whether you believe it or whether it terrifies you. That feeling will tell you everything about where you actually stand. Your comfort with that statement reveals whether you're building strength or just performing it. Subscribe because you're choosing to become the kind of man who doesn't need constant validation, but creates constant value. Drop approval on this video, not because you're seeking my validation, but because you're declaring you understand what real luxury actually means. And prepare yourself for what's coming next, because the ancient wisdom you're about to discover will completely destroy your excuses about why you can't change, why circumstances control you, why you need things you think you need. The men who understand what's coming next don't just survive in chaos, they become absolutely unstoppable because of it. Your transformation continues now.